What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video, and today we got our updated full March Madness bracket predictions where we take Joe Lunardi's updated bracketology where we get all of his seeds that are projected for this point in the season. We take it, put it in our own personal PDF, and fill it out from the first round all the way to the national championship. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and I know this is the most popular series on my channel, so let's get one out here around Christmas time, and there'll be plenty of more of these videos and a bunch of other college basketball content coming your way. So make sure you guys subscribe. If you guys are not already, give me a Christmas present and hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, let's fill out Joe Lunardi's most recent bracketology that came out here on Christmas Eve. So we still have Auburn as our top overall seed. I definitely agree with that. And if there is something that I have a strong opinion on as far as any teams that should be higher or lower, I'll let you guys know as we go throughout these teams. But for the most part, I'm just going to be talking about these teams and filling it out what my Final Four would look like based on this bracket at this point in the season. So let's start off with our top overall seed. It is the Auburn Tigers versus either Southern University or American University. Now, to be honest, I don't know too much about Southern or American just yet, but assuming they do win their leagues, they will get a 16 seed and play in that first four game. But either way, I think Auburn is going to win that game and move on to the next round. They are the favorites to win the national championship right now, and for good reason. They are playing amazing, and they have a deep team. They have the leader in the National Player of the Year race in Janai Broome. All around fantastic team. Clemson versus West Virginia in the 8-9 game. This would be a really good game. I think I'm leaning towards Clemson here, especially with Tucker DeVries being hurt and out for the year. I think West Virginia still has a chance in certain games. I think they probably will still make the NCAA tournament the way that Javon Small has been playing, really carrying a lot of that team. He is a really good lead guard who can control the pace of the game, which is very important. But I feel like Clemson has too much between, Ian Shefton down low, pulling in about 20 boards. I feel like that is a big mismatch for West Virginia. And also Chase Hunter, very good player for Clemson as well. They have more pieces, and they went pretty far into the tournament last year, I believe the Elite Eight. So, and they're returning a lot of that team. Not PJ Hall, but a lot of that team that has experience. I feel like they're going to get past this West Virginia team here in round one and move on to the second round. Next up, we do have Memphis versus Furman in the 5 versus 12 game. This is an interesting game because, yes, Memphis has looked good. They have some pretty good wins against teams like UConn and Michigan State. But they do have, some not so great losses, including one at home to Arkansas State, who I believe is on here somewhere as the 13 seed coming out of the Sun Belt. So Furman is still a very excellent team, and I feel like they are one of those programs, at least as of recently, that they're so well coached that they are always going to be able to upset somebody. However, I feel like this is the best Memphis team that Penny Hardaway has had since he's become the coach of Memphis. And I think this backcourt of PJ Haggerty and Tyrese Hunter is going to be enough to at least push them to the second round. Next up, we got Texas A&M versus High Point. And I'm not going to lie, I'm actually pretty high on this Texas A&M team. I've been skeptical of them. I've been a big critic of Buzz Williams for the past few years as far as not having a good enough non-con or regular season to get a high enough seed to make a deep run into the tournament. But this year they have a really good team. They have their senior point guard in Wade Taylor, Henry Coleman down low, who I think is going to be a huge piece, especially once we get to March Madness, and really good roster all around that I think it is going to be enough to get by the Panthers here of High Point. And I actually do really like High Point, and I wish that they had a different matchup because I definitely would take them to get a 13-over-4 upset. if they were playing somebody else, but I have high hopes for Texas A&M right now, assuming whenever they get to league play they don't crush those hopes for me, which might happen because the SEC is very stacked. But Texas A&M, to me, is a sleeper to make it all the way to the Final Four. If they have the right path, I think that they'll get past the first round in most matchups. I like the Aggies here. Ole Miss versus either Drake or St. Mary's in the first four game. In the first four game, I am going to take Drake. These are two of the top mid-majors in the country. This would be an excellent game. I trust Drake a little bit more. What they have built over there with Coach McCollum coming in year one has been amazing, and I think that they are going to be, if people don't look out for them, they are going to be a sleeper. Drake is a team you definitely have to take seriously. They have players on their team that just make for a amazing March Madness story if they were to make a run, and I think that they have enough to get by St. Mary's. And then Ole Miss, of course, is coached by Chris Beard, who we all know made a national championship game when he was the coach at Texas Tech, went to Texas, and then, shit went down, he got canned, and now he wound up at Ole Miss, who he has turned into somewhat of a basketball team, or basketball school. Not really, there'll always be football first, I feel like, but what Chris Beard has done there, Ole Miss not traditionally a good basketball program, but I am going to take Drake. I feel like Drake, they have those players that just, coming from Division II, level, following their coach, coming up to Division I to play at Drake, and they are undefeated at this point in the season. They're playing amazing. Bennett Sturts is a awesome all-around player who can shoot the ball. He is the type of player that could have some March magic and will his team through, I think, at least to the next round. Next up, we got Oregon versus UMass Lowell. And I have been saying, I feel like Oregon is one of those teams that could be primed to get upset in the first round. They are a really good team. Dana Altman is an excellent coach. However, I did watch, some games this year that were a little closer, specifically against the Portland Pilots, that have had me a little bit skeptical of Oregon, of why that game was so close. And it makes me feel like Oregon could be prone to being upset. However, I don't think UMass Lowell will have enough. I think Oregon will get it done and get past them. Next up, we got Michigan versus Utah State. And Utah State's interesting. They were undefeated. They lost a game they shouldn't have lost. And then they come back the next week and beat St. Mary's. And I believe they have Nevada coming up here on New Year's Eve. That is going to be a great game. Two really good Mountain West teams that are probably going to be fighting for, maybe the same spot in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if both of those teams will end up in the tournament out of the Mountain West. So that could be a very important game. Michigan, however, is a good team. They got their new coach in there from FAU. He's doing a really good job. Danny Wolf comes in from Yale, who was in the NCAA tournament last year with Yale, and he's playing point center. They got Vlad Golden. They're running two centers out there, but one of them's their main playmaker. And Trey Donaldson is probably, I think he has one of the nastiest handles in college basketball. That's going to be super fun to watch in the tournament. And all around, I think Michigan's super fun team to watch. I want to see them move on, and I think they'll get by Utah State, where really, other than San Diego State, the Mountain West has not had a really good track record in the NCAA tournament recently. Other than the San Diego State run to the national championship a couple years ago, other than that, the Mountain West has not had that good of a track record lately. They've been a very good conference, just not when they get to March. Kentucky versus Montana. Montana, I don't see them getting it done. However, Kentucky has been prone to losing to teams like that in a 2 versus 15 situation. But I don't think Montana's going to get it done. No more John Calipari there. So we'll see if trends can shift for Kentucky, at least for the first round. Let's go ahead and finish this region out. We got Auburn versus Clemson. And I do think that Clemson could keep this game close. They're going to play hard, but Auburn is too good, man, and I have them moving on over here to the Sweet 16. Next up, we got Memphis versus Texas A&M. This is a 4 versus 5 matchup that I think would go down to the wire. It could go to overtime. It could definitely end on like a buzzer beater or something like that. This would be a fantastic matchup. However, I am going to go with Texas A&M. I think that they are the better team. I'm sorry, Memphis fans, but I'm actually pretty high on Texas A&M right now, and it's going to be SEC versus SEC, Auburn versus Texas A&M here in the Sweet 16. Then we got Drake versus Oregon. I think that this would be a very fun matchup as well. Probably go down to the wire. Oregon looks like they could be legit, though. Like, beating teams like Alabama this year really impressed me. They only have one loss on the season as well. But I think Drake is they can be that Cinderella this year. They 100% can be. You know, you hear about the stories of some of the players on that team where Ben McCollum had to call them up, and they were leaving, you know, like their business jobs and everything to come back and play with him another year at Drake when he got the Division I job. Stories like that just scream a really good March Madness story where they are just going to come in and go on a magical run. I'm taking Drake, 11 seed, to upset Oregon, the 3 seed here, and make it to the Sweet 16. I just think Drake is one of those teams that has that type of magic this year. Michigan versus Kentucky. All the matchups in this region for the second round, I feel like, are going to be within 10 points. Even the Auburn-Clemson one, Auburn could run away with that one, but other than that, all of them are going to be very close, including this one, Michigan versus Kentucky. I kind of feel like Kentucky probably has the better roster. It would take some big games from guys like Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf to beat Kentucky, and it may take some off nights for certain Kentucky players as well for Michigan to get it done, especially Lamont Butler, and maybe Kobe Brea is missing some threes. But I like this Michigan team, and I'm sorry, Kentucky fans, but I'm going with Michigan to the Sweet 16 to upset Kentucky. I really do like this Michigan team this year. I think they're fun to watch, and I think that they can play good enough defense against Kentucky to slow down some of these players. I know Kentucky has looked really good, especially at times against Duke especially. They really impressed me in that game, and against Gonzaga. 2 excellent wins in close games that, just like I said, really impressed me, and I feel like Kentucky has potential to go far, but in this bracket, I'm not going to have them go too far. I am going to have them come out of the first round, but not make it to the Sweet 16 as they get upset by Michigan. I do think Kentucky has the better roster, but I think Michigan can play a better game on certain nights, and they have a chance to win. I'm going to take them to win here. I like to pick some upsets. Give me one there, Michigan to the Sweet 16. Auburn versus Texas A&M in an SEC showdown. I think it would be a very excellent game. I don't know how far I trust Wade Taylor to lead this team in March Madness, though. I'm very much looking forward to how Texas A&M plays in conference play. I do think Auburn is the best team in the country, and I am going to take them to move on here to the Elite Eight. Then we got Drake versus Michigan, and I'm gonna keep the Cinderella slipper to fit here for Drake and have them move on to the Elite Eight. I just think that they have that magic. We talked about Michigan and all the things that they do, especially with Danny Wolf, and I think that they can make a run as well, which is why I have them going to the Sweet 16. But Both these teams, first-year head coaches, really good head coaches, and bright futures for these programs. Winner goes to the Elite Eight. Give me Drake here in this one. And then I am going to have Drake's run come to an end when they run into the top overall seed in the entire tournament in the Auburn Tigers. And Auburn is going to come out of this first region and make it to the Final Four. At this point in the season, I feel like there is no way I can leave Auburn out of the Final Four. The way that they've been playing, it is just their point differential. Not only are they winning games, they are winning games by like 20 plus points, and that's including road games, destroying teams, and these are good teams that they're playing, and I've been very impressed. Yes, they did lose to Duke, but that was a true road game in one of the toughest places to play in college basketball, and they still led for part of that game, especially throughout the first half to halftime. But that's a tough place to play. They kept it close. Like I can't fault them too much for that. I think they're the best team in the country. I gotta have them in my Final Four. At this point, it's hard not to. Let's go ahead and down to this next region here. Speaking of the Duke Blue Devils, they're the top seed in this region as the 1, and they will be facing the Penguins of Youngstown, Ohio, as the 16th seed in the first round, where I am definitely going to have Duke move on. Duke has a really good defense, and if Cooper Flagg can get his efficiency up, he is going to start averaging more points as well. That is the only thing about Cooper Flagg. He puts up a lot of shots, and he does a good job being that lead scorer for his team, but he is not necessarily the most efficient player. But I think that this Duke team has a very good roster, and I'm going to take them for sure to outplay Youngstown. And that we've seen that with Duke. Whenever they do play lesser competition, They don't really play down to them. They are all gas, no breaks against them, and they usually run away with it pretty early. I have no doubt that Duke is going to be able to do that in the first round. Georgia versus Texas Tech. That is a really good 8-9 matchup. I feel like it is a very fair game and would definitely come down to the wire. And I think I'm actually going to go with Georgia. I think that they have a very talented team and a couple of really good freshmen that I like a lot. And I know Texas Tech, they got a really good player in JT Toppin down low, but Georgia has the freshman big to be able to defend that. And Georgia, I can't remember, at least in recent years, a time where they made the NCAA tournament and especially not won a game in the NCAA tournament. I would like to see it, so I'm going to give them one here. The SEC is very strong this year. They're going to be well tested heading into the tournament. As long as they keep it up and make it there, give me the Bulldogs to move on. Oklahoma versus UC San Diego, and I really thought about this one, guys. I really wanted to take UC San Diego to pull off the 12-5 upset over Oklahoma. UC San Diego looks really good. It's going to be them or UC Irvine out of that league, and both of those teams could really pull off some upsets, but they're definitely a sleeper. I got to go with Oklahoma, though. Oklahoma's impressed me a lot recently, especially in that game, the Jumpman game against Oklahoma or against Michigan. That was a very impressive game to me, and Jeremiah Fears is the real deal. And yeah, I think this is Porter Moser's best team that he's had since he took the Oklahoma job after he left Loyola Chicago and led them on that Final Four run. Houston versus Grand Canyon, 4 versus 13 seed. Grand Canyon kind of fell off a little bit, I was really hyped on them in the preseason, especially. They've kind of lost all of their big games. I'm not even necessarily sure they're going to win their league anymore. I mean, if I was to bet money on it, I would say that they'd still win their league. But there is a team called Tarleton State that is really good in their league as well. So don't sleep on them. Grand Canyon has to win their league to make the tournament, so it is not a guarantee that they will be in. I think Houston, I still got to bet on Houston if this matchup would happen. I mean, I think Grand Canyon, especially the way that they played Alabama in the tournament last year, I believe that was the second round, and then that Alabama team that beat them went on to the Final Four. I think it was very impressive, and I think Grand Canyon is going to be prepared for the tournament. I would hope so. I mean, they have a really good team, man, and I want to see them make a run more than anybody. But I got to see more throughout the regular season, which unfortunately they're not going to have any more opportunities in non-con play to play some top-level competition. So we'll see, but for now I got to go with Houston. Grand Canyon just has not shown me enough, even with their star power that they have on that team, especially with Ty and Grant Foster. Next up, we got Illinois versus Arizona State. I think that this would be a very good game. Both teams have some really good freshmen, actually, and I do like this Illinois team. I feel like the problem with Illinois, at least in the past so many years, is they've been missing that true lead guard, and I think they have one this year in Kasparis. I believe his last name is Jakaitis, something like that. I'm just going to call him Jakaitis. I know I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, but he's an overseas freshman that has been killing it and is definitely a true lead guard for this team. And they also have Kai Boswell, the transfer from Arizona, who can play make as well. So that is going to be a really valuable thing for Illinois to have this year in March Madness. And even though Arizona State has some really good players, and I feel like they are a sleeper in March Madness, especially as an 11 seed, I got to go with Illinois here to move on. I mean, Arizona State, very underrated team. Very, very underrated team this year so far. Gonzaga versus Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut is a team I could definitely see coming out of their league. They have a couple of decent wins this year. I believe their best one is against St. Joseph's, which is actually a pretty good win. St. Joseph's is a team that, could potentially, I think that they could probably compete in the A10 tournament and come out of there. It's going to be tough with Dayton and VCU and all them teams, but St. Joseph's is there, man. Look out, St. Bonaventure Road. The A10 is really good this year, but I think Gonzaga is going to win this game. I think, they have the lead guard in Ryan Nembhard. They have like 3 good centers who can come in and give them minutes. I don't think that this is Mark Few's best team by far. I don't think it's his best team, but it is a very, very good team. St. John's versus Penn State. I'm going to go with St. John's, and I do like this Penn State team. They play tough defense. Ace Baldwin's a really good defender, but St. John's has impressed me a lot throughout the non-conference part of the season, where I expect them to get a round 1 win this year with Rick Pitino. I think they have 3 really good playmakers on this team. Zuby Ejiofor has taken a huge step up this year to be a good center for them. I like the Johnnies to move on here. Then we got Florida versus Indiana State. Florida has a top-tier backcourt in the country. Walter Clayton Jr. is amazing. Will Richard, Elijah Martin, transferred from FAU. Super good team here in that 1-2-3 punch there on the wings, and their lead guard, Walter Clayton, very tough. Indiana State, are they really going to win the Missouri Valley and get a bid as a 15 seed? I doubt it. I'm taking Florida. I think even if they did, Florida would probably beat them pretty bad. Florida's played really good against lesser competition so far this year, and I think they would. Duke versus Georgia. I'm sorry, Georgia. I'm going to have Duke move on. Oklahoma versus Houston. Used to be a Big 12 matchup for about just 2 years or so. And then Oklahoma went on to the SEC. This is actually a tough one. I could see this one going either way. Milos Uzan, the point guard for Houston, facing his former team here. That would be a pretty interesting storyline for the second round of the tournament. I really don't know who I want to go with here. I think I'm going to trust Houston's defense here especially. They've been in some close ones lost in overtime, I believe, to Alabama and San Diego State this year, which were two of their bigger games. And they also lost to Auburn, which we thought was, kind of a bad sign at first. But now that Auburn lost, it's like, okay, that's the top team in the country. I'm going to trust Houston here to move on. I think they're gonna prove us, pretty good heading into Big 12 play. I think they're gonna be a top 3 or 4 team in the Big 12 still for sure. I don't know if they. I think Iowa State's going to be the top team in the Big 12, and then it's probably Kansas. Houston's going to be competing for that 3 spot out of the Big 12. Illinois versus Gonzaga. Very good matchup. Like I said, I think Illinois this year with their lead guard is going to be tough, but I think Gonzaga has more experience on that team. It's not just Kasparis, who is the only freshman starting on this team. It's also Will Riley, who is another really good freshman on the wing. But I think the experience of Gonzaga is going to show here. I'm going to take them to move on to the Sweet 16. And then we got St. John's versus Florida, our 2 versus 7 seed. And I'm going to have another upset. I'm going to have another 2 seed lose in the second round. And that is going to be St. John's taking down Florida. I think St. John's has the firepower on offense to be able to compete with a fast team like Florida. I think Florida is probably the better team, but I think St. John's can get it done, especially if they play some lockdown defense. This is going to be a close game, but I'm going to take the Johnnies here to move on to the Sweet 16. I think that this would be a really good game. I think that Houston's defense, coached by Kelvin Sampson, is going to maybe cause some fits for Cooper Flagg, and I think if Duke does win this game, they are going to have to go to somebody else to try to win them this ball game, but I think that they will, whether it's Tyrese Proctor or Con Kneppel. I'm not sure, but I think one of those guys is going to have to step up big time in this game. I think they get it done. Give me Duke to move on to the Elite Eight. I think that Duke, talk about Houston's defense, Duke's defense is just as good, if not better. And I think Houston's offense is going to struggle with that because, yes, they do have LJ Cryer, but I think that they do struggle to score on this Duke defense. Next up, Gonzaga versus St. John's. And I would like to have St. John's keep winning. I think Gonzaga will get Zuby Ejiofor into foul trouble early. And with those 3 bigs they got on that team, man, I'm going to take Gonzaga here to move on to the Elite Eight and face the Duke Blue Devils. Then we got Duke versus Gonzaga, our 1 versus 3 seed, to move on to the Final Four. And I think that Gonzaga has the team to beat Duke. I'm just saying. I really do think they do. I mean, they can take Khalif Battle and try to lock down Cooper Flagg as much as possible. Nolan Hickman on the help. They got 3 solid bigs that can help as well. I think it would be very tough, man. I think it would be very tough for Duke to win this game. They do have a really good defense, but Ryan Nembhard is going to be a difference maker here. If Nolan Hickman's hitting his threes and gets hot at the right time, Gonzaga could go on a run all the way to the championship. So Gonzaga's going to have to get a lot of their scoring done, get it down low, and really play some tough defense, but I think they're going to get it done. I think this is a good matchup for Gonzaga here, and I'm going to have them come out of this region. Let's go up to this top right region where Tennessee is our number 1 seed, and they're going to be facing not Lamar Jackson, but Lamar University here in the first round, and we are going to take Tennessee to move on there. Tennessee's too good right now. Chaz Laner is a stud. They have a lot of really good players that just play their role excellently around them, especially Zakai Ziegler, who is, I feel like, because he's been in college so long, not enough people want to give him a lot of credit for how good of a playmaker and defender he is. I think that he is going to help Tennessee move on past Lamar here in this first round. I mean, it's not going to be too difficult to get past the 16-seeded Lamar. Next up, our 8 and 9 matchup, we got Dayton versus San Diego State, two of the better mid-majors in college basketball. And wow, Tennessee would have a really tough matchup in the second round with whoever wins this matchup. I am going to take Dayton. I like this Dayton team a lot this year, and I know that they did just lose to Cincinnati, but they also just beat Marquette not too long ago. Dayton looks really good, and I think that this is a team that could go on a run. San Diego State I do like a lot, but I don't think that this is their year. I think that this is going to be more of a rebuilding year for them. They're going to get back next year and have some more experience and be able to make a run. But they're always capable of that, especially with how they play defense. But I am going to take Dayton here in this one. I think Notch Cheeks, one of the best names in college basketball. I got to see him in the next round and move on. But really, other than him, they got Santos, who has some experience. They were fighting. I know they had Deron Holmes last year, but they were fighting a lot last year to be able to make a run. And I think that this year could be their year. I think they got better guards with Malachi Smith, Enoch Cheeks, a very solid team. Next up, we got Purdue versus Arkansas State. And Arkansas State's a team that we saw beat Memphis on the road. So, and I do think that they are definitely the best team in the Sun Belt Conference, which the Sun Belt's not very strong this year. The past few years it's been like App State. But Arkansas State looks like the clear favorite in that league, and I could see them pulling off an upset. And Purdue doesn't necessarily look that great. They just got beat bad by Auburn, which isn't saying too much. Auburn's a really good team, but even so, like, I feel like Braden Smith's an excellent playmaker, and he can get hot and score at times, but they are going to have to rely on that heavy. I know Trey Kaufman-Wren has been a pretty good scorer down low this year and filling up some of that spot that Zach Edey left, but I feel like the injury to their big 7'3" center, who was a freshman, is really going to cost them come March time, and I don't know if they have enough scoring. I don't think Fletcher Lawyer's necessarily that good of a scorer. I feel like he's streaky, he can be good, but relying on a streaky shooter I don't think is that good. I'm going to take my first 12/5 upset here, though. I'm going to take Arkansas State out of the Sun Belt to beat Purdue, and after Purdue makes a big run all the way to the championship game last year, they're back to pulling off a regular Purdue thing in March Madness and losing in the first round and getting upset. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus Lipscomb. Mississippi State looks really good, guys, and I've been trying to tell you guys about Josh Hubbard, and I hope you guys were listening, because Josh Hubbard is one of the best players in college basketball, and he is only a sophomore. I was saying it last year as a freshman. Who is this guy? He is really good, and Chris Jans is an excellent coach. They're going to be a problem next year, and people are starting to realize that, but I've been saying it since the preseason. I'm a huge Josh Hubbard fan. He's probably my favorite player that's not on my favorite team in WVU. So I'm going to take Mississippi State over Lipscomb 100%. They're heating up. They just beat Memphis on the road. Arkansas State versus Mississippi State. Two teams that just beat Memphis not too long ago. Pitt versus Ohio State. This is actually a matchup that we've already seen this year, and it was a home game for Ohio State. And Jalen Lowe? Somebody hit a buzzer beater for Pitt in that game. Very good game, but that was on the road for Pitt as well. I'm taking Pitt. I think they're the better team. Ohio State just hasn't shown me enough. I think they have a decent roster, but I think that they're going to have to build on it upon next year. Next up, we got Kansas versus South Dakota State. South Dakota State's actually a really good mid-major. I would pick them as a 14 seed. I hate the matchup against Kansas, though, guys. South Dakota State and High Point were the two teams in this bracket that I was like, wow, we really had to match them up against teams that I don't think they have much of a chance against, because most teams I would probably pick the upsets, and I like to pick those big upsets, but I got to pick Kansas. The way that this bracket is laid out is just not friendly for a South Dakota State run like I would like to. I'd like to have the Jackrabbits hopping all the way to the Elite Eight if I could. But I think Kansas is too good. You know, DeJuan Harris Jr., he's been one of the better point guards in the country for the past few years. Hunter Dickinson has been awesome this year. They still got KJ Adams down low as well. And the additions of Rylan Griffin, Zeke Mayo, excellent on the wings. And they have depth this year. Kansas is a sleeper to win it all this year. I feel like at the beginning of the season, they were really hyped up as being one of the favorites to win it all. It kind of went down because they took a couple road losses to Creighton and Missouri. But let's not forget how many good wins they have this year against teams like Duke. Very solid, man. Look out for Kansas. I still think that they can win it all this year. Next up, we got Cincinnati versus Texas. That would be an awesome matchup. Cincinnati's starting to look really good. I was worried about them a little bit. You know, they have the roster, but they did not look good against Villanova on the road. But they bounced back since then, picked up a couple good wins against Xavier and Dayton. In the in-state battles there in Ohio, Cincinnati's playing really good, and I think I'm going to pick them over Texas. I do really like Trey Johnson out of Texas. He is an excellent freshman that I think could will this team to a win or two, but I just don't like – I don't think Caden Shedrick's that great. I don't think Arthur Kaluma's that great. I don't like the transfers that Texas brought in other than Tremont Mark. I think Tremont Mark is great. But Trey Johnson, definitely the best player on this team. He's going to have to be a big reason why they do beat Cincinnati. Also, I just realized Dylan Mitchell, the forward for Cincinnati, is a transfer from Texas. So a nice little storyline plugged in there as well. Marquette versus Merrimack, 2 versus 15 seed. I am going to go with Marquette here. I don't think Merrimack's going to get it done. Cam Jones, like I said, if it wasn't Josh Hubbard as my favorite player in college basketball, it's probably Cam Jones. Cam Jones is so fun to watch, and he's really improved as a playmaker this year too. He can give you 30 on any given night, and he can also give you 8 to 10 assists and a smooth 18 points on any given night. So that's really tough there, and even with the losses they have from Iguodaro and Tyler Kolek, Marquette still got a really, really good roster. Tennessee versus Dayton in the second round. Not going to sugarcoat it. I'm taking Dayton to pull off the 8-1 upset. Tennessee falls in the second round. There is always one seed that usually does not make it to the Sweet 16. I mean, occasionally you'll have them all make it to the Sweet 16, but it is very rare for all 1 seeds to make it to the Elite 8, which I will almost never have in any of my brackets. I will always choose one of my 1 seeds to at least lose in the Sweet 16 game, and Tennessee is going to go out in the second round here to Dayton. I think Dayton, super good team. They could definitely compete with a team like Tennessee, in my opinion. They have really good defensive guards, really good guards in general, guards that can score, that have been clutch, especially Malachi Smith. And I believe Nick Santos, and then they have that transfer from Ohio State as well, down low as well, to form a pretty good front court. So I do like this Dayton team a lot. This could be the year they make a run. I got them beating Tennessee. Then we got Arkansas State versus Mississippi State, and I'm taking Mississippi State for sure. I mean, I love this team. Josh Hubbard, great. Just too great. Chris Jans is a proven coach, and I think he's doing great things there at Mississippi State. Give me them to move on to the Sweet 16. Then we got Pitt versus Kansas. I actually think that this is a game that Pitt can win. I think Pitt can beat Kansas. I am going to take Kansas to win, though. I think that they have too much down low, man. I think Hunter Dickinson, although he doesn't look like the most muscular guy in the world, that is a 7-footer that has, he's big, he's a thick man that I think is going to be too much on a guy like Guillermo Diaz-Graham for Pitt. Like that, Diaz-Graham is a really good player, but he's skinny. And Hunter Dickinson is that's going to wear on him. And then you got to worry about KJ Adams as well down low. I feel like Kansas is going to get a lot of paint points. You got guys like AJ Storr who can drive to the rack. It's going to be a tough day in the paint for Pitt, and they're going to have to keep up offensively, which I do think they have some players that can do that, like Ishmael Leggett. Damian Dunn, is he back from injury yet? I think. But I am going to take Kansas here to move on. Cincinnati versus Marquette. I kind of want to pick another upset, but I've already picked two seeds to lose in the second round, and I think Marquette is probably the better team. And I know they have lost recently to Dayton, and Cincinnati did beat Dayton, but Marquette has shown that they compete on the road. Like, they were close in that game with Dayton on the road, and they were close with Iowa State on the road, which is even more impressive. And Marquette's picked up some good wins this year. I think that they are a solid team, and I'm going to see them here in the Sweet 16. Dayton versus Mississippi State. Unfortunately, I love you, Josh Hubbard, but this is where Mississippi State's run is going to come to an end, because I have Dayton making a run all the way to the Elite Eight. And that's what happens when Josh Hubbard meets Enoch Cheeks and this really good Dayton team. And I think that they're going to have enough guards to throw at Josh Hubbard and even a guy like Kanye Clary to be able to slow them down and play some good defense. I like Dayton a lot in that matchup. Then we got Kansas versus Marquette, and this would be an extremely good game. I think Kansas is going to have to find ways to slow down Cam Jones. They're going to have to try to slow him down with DeJuan Harris, AJ Storr, even Zeke Mayo. They're going to have to slow him down, and I do think that they can do that. But Marquette can find some scoring in other ways. You know, Stevie Mitchell, they got Joplin down low, Ben Gold down low, Sean Jones, super quick player. They're going to need these X-Factor guys like Stevie Mitchell and Sean Jones especially to have big games to beat Kansas. But I like Kansas. I trust their players more. Give me the Jayhawks in the Elite Eight. Dayton versus Kansas, winner to the Final Four. 3 seed versus 8 seed. And I'm going to take the 8 seed of Dayton. I have them beat Tennessee, and I'm going to have them beat Kansas. They are my big sleeper this year, and I feel like they shouldn't be a sleeper. Like, honestly, for what they've done this year, like I said, I know they just lost to Cincinnati. I feel like an 8 seed for what they've done this year is too low. I feel like they should be at least a 6 or a 7. I could see them going on this run, and although I think beating Tennessee, that's a decent matchup for them, beating Kansas is going to be tough, especially if Hunter Dickinson's on his game, man. But I'm going to take them. I'm going to take Dayton to have some magic here and make it all the way to the Final Four. And we have our last region, which our 1 seed is Iowa State. And they will be facing either Hampton or Southeast Missouri State, where I will have Iowa State win that game. One thing I will say about Iowa State, they have a lead guard in Taman Lipsey, and they do have a breakout star who has taken this game to the next level in Kashawn Gilbert. Very impressed with that backcourt. That may be the best backcourt in the country. It's up there. There's a few that can compete, but that's one of the best. Wisconsin versus Arkansas in the first round, 8 versus 9. That's a very good matchup. I like that a lot from Joe Lunardi. I would love to see them two go at it in the first round. John Tunji has been phenomenal for Wisconsin. John Calipari and March, you know, I feel like let's give him one. Let's give him one here. And I will say, even though I love Boogie Fland in this team, I don't think Arkansas has enough shooting, especially against Iowa State's defense. So I'm going to go ahead and move Iowa State to the Sweet 16. Sorry, Arkansas fans, but I am giving John Calipari a win in March, which he desperately needs to get a win. He needs to see. It's almost like you're in a slump shooting, and you need to see one go in. John Calipari needs to win a game in the NCAA tournament because it's been a little while. Michigan State versus Liberty. Tom Izzo, on the other hand, does have a really good track record in March Madness, especially in these first round games. But Liberty is one of my favorite mid-majors right now. They are a sleeper, man. And I'm not sure how much I do like this Michigan State team. I am going to take Michigan State. I just can't go against Tom Izzo. I was going to say, everybody's got to have their turn to get upset in the NCAA tournament. I feel like Tom Izzo is just never going to be that guy. He's never going to lose in the first round. So you might as well just pick him. Give me Michigan State here. Cohen Carr is one of the best dunkers in college basketball. I will say that. As far as Michigan State's backcourt, I feel like they're inconsistent. But they have an all-around team that is well coached, and they get the job done. I feel like they'll get it done against Liberty. UCLA versus Kent State. I don't like the MAC conference this year. I like Ohio. Give me the Bobcats to come out of this region. Maybe I'll think about it. But give me UCLA. A really good defense. Dylan Andrews, a good point guard. Give me the Bruins. Baylor versus either Missouri or SMU. That would be a really good first four game between SMU and Missouri. SMU's been kind of looking like the second best team in the American, just behind Memphis. I thought at the beginning of the year it was going to be Wichita State, but it looks like the Mustangs. So that's something there, but I'm going to take Missouri to beat SMU. And then I am going to take Baylor to win against Missouri. I do think Missouri could win this game. They actually haven't looked too bad. They did just lose to Illinois, but it was a close game. They also beat Kansas this year at home, so in the border brawl. But I do like Baylor a lot. VJ Edgecombe, if he can just get his efficiency up a little bit, he's going to be a problem. He's one of the more athletic players in the country. Jeremy Roach, veteran point guard. You got Norchad Omier, veteran big. It's just Baylor's defense. If Baylor can get their defense together, they could be a team to go on a run. UConn versus Princeton. And yeah, UConn's been hot recently. Ever since they went 0-3 in the Maui Invitational, they haven't lost another game since. And they've been playing really good teams like Texas and Gonzaga and Baylor. But Princeton is a pretty good team, and they're a team that just beat their in-state rival. I'm not sure if they're really rivals, but might as well be. They're in the same state of New Jersey. And Rutgers, I haven't taken a bigger upset than a 12-5 yet, and I do think even if UConn does win a game or two in March Madness this year, I don't think I see them three-peating whatsoever. I'm gonna take Princeton. I'm sorry, UConn fans, but I'm gonna take Princeton to move on. Next upset here of this tournament in the first round. UConn, you just won back-to-back titles. I think you guys can manage 1 year of being upset in the first round, and Princeton has been doing it the past few years. So if they can come out of the Ivy League again, last year was Yale, but the year before that was the year they made it to the Elite Eight. Or the year before that. But either way, they were in the tournament both those 2 years. They can do it, and the Ivy League is known for doing this. Xavier Lee is a great player who can get you a triple-double as well. And Princeton, they're going to be playing good defense. I think UConn is a team that it is possible that they could get upset this year in the first round of March Madness. Dan Hurley's still an excellent coach. Not saying anything bad about him or anything like that. But I do think that this team is capable of being upset. That's all I'm going to say. It is not as good a team as they have had the last 2 years, even though they are getting hot. And Liam McNeely is turning up as a really good player as the freshman of that team. He's only getting better and better. But I am going to take Princeton. If it is them out of the Ivy League, look out for Columbia. But I like Princeton here. Maryland versus North Carolina. That would be an excellent game, and I think I've picked 7 seeds in every region so far. So I kind of want makes me kind of want to go with North Carolina. They do have the better guards, of course. R.J. Davis, Seth Trimble, all them guys, but Maryland has some good guards too. Jacoby Gillespie, and they have the better front court. So it really is front court versus back court. Maryland with Derek Queen and Julian Reese, and then North Carolina with these three really good guards. Elliot Cadeau, also a really good player. And I'm going to go with North Carolina here as the 10th seed. I like Maryland a lot this year, and I want to see them move on to at least one round, to the second round, but I think North Carolina is just not a good matchup with them, and if they can get their offense, going fast-paced, it is going to be tough for Maryland to keep up, I feel like. Maryland versus Norfolk State, or Alabama versus Norfolk State. Give me Alabama. Very good team this year, and one that has taken a couple losses early this year, but they've played a very tough schedule in the non-con, and they're well-tested, and they have good experience. They made it to the Final Four last year, and they added some really good pieces as well. Michigan State versus UCLA. This would be an awesome 4 versus 5 matchup between two historically good basketball programs. I'm gonna go with Michigan State. I'm gonna trust Sparty, trust Tom Izzo there to move on in that one. I feel like that is going to be as close as it can be, though. Baylor versus Princeton. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and have Princeton move on. We got to have a couple of Cinderella runs. We got Dayton as our 8 seed to the Final Four. We got Drake as an 11 to the Elite 8. Let's take Princeton as our 14 seed to make it to the Sweet 16. I think that they can do it, especially with these matchups. So they can beat UConn. They can definitely beat Baylor. Give me Princeton to get it done. North Carolina versus Alabama. This is a matchup that we have already seen this year, and Alabama actually went to Chapel Hill on the road and won by a good margin, and I trust they would do the same in March Madness if they got the chance. Give me Alabama to the Sweet 16. Iowa State versus Michigan State. This is where I'm going to have Michigan State's run to come to an end. These are two teams that were in the Maui tournament, but I believe they did not meet each other in that tournament. Give me Iowa State to move on, though. I think that they are the better team. Like I mentioned, one of the better backcourts in the nation. They have some really good pieces around them, too, like Curtis Jones, the forward Milan. Really good team. Princeton versus Alabama. This is where Princeton's run is going to come to an end. I think Alabama is too good. I don't see them losing to Princeton. I feel like they would be able to get by them there. Especially Mark Sears is one of those players that could really take over games and drop a lot of points during March Madness games. We got Iowa State versus Alabama. Winner goes to the Final Four, and this fantastic matchup. This is the matchup I could see in the Final Four. I could see both these teams making it there. But yeah, Iowa State could definitely get there. Best backcourt, or one of the better backcourts. Alabama has a really good backcourt too. They did lose Right Cell, but they brought in Chris Youngblood, who was injured for the first portion of the year. They got the freshman Philon, who is really good. Grant Nelson as a power forward. You got Cliff Amore as a center, who is a great defender and has been his whole career at Rutgers. I just don't know. I think Grant Nelson is definitely better than Milan Momcilovic. And I think Cliff Amore would do is probably the better center than Deshaun Jackson there on Iowa State. It is close. This is a close game. It's going to come down to those X Factor players. It could come down to the best two players, either Mark Sears or Keshawn Gilbert. Both Player of the Year contenders this year. But I am going to go with Alabama. I'm going to trust my gut here. I think Alabama would get this one done. And if they had Latrell Wright-Sell, Alabama might be my pick to win the championship this year. But we do have our Final Four. 2 SEC teams, both in the state of Alabama, in Alabama and Auburn. You have Dayton out of the A-10 conference as our 8 seed, and Gonzaga out of the WAC as a 3 seed. and Auburn is a 1 seed, Alabama is a 2 seed. So Final Four is set. Our first Final Four matchup, we do have Auburn versus Gonzaga, which is a matchup I could see happening in the Final Four, obviously, or even in the national championship game. These are two teams I think can win the national championship this year, and it's going to be a fantastic game. I mean, it's going to come down to this Gonzaga front court that I've been talking about this entire video throughout their run of Braden Huff, Graham Ike, and Ben Gregg. 3 giants that they have on this team that can all score down low, can all rebound the boards, and can all defend down low really well. That's going to be tough, especially with their lead guard and Ryan Nembhard, who is a phenomenal playmaker, can shoot the ball, score when he needs to. I think that if Gonzaga can have Khalif Battle and have Nolan Hickman step up throughout this tournament, they can win the national title. And Auburn, my big question mark for them is, are they going to be okay without a lead guard? This Auburn team, if they are going to win the national championship, which of course I think they can, I think that it is going to have to be through Janai Broome, and it is going to have to be continued through him for them to win it. They have really good guards around them, but they don't have that lead playmaking guard on their team like a Ryan Nembhard. They have Chad Baker-Mazara, who's really good, Tahad Pettiford, the freshman, who is so good, super underrated. Really good shooters like Miles Kelly. They also have Denver Jones. They kind of have some guards by committee almost. And I think their leading assist guy is actually Janai Broome. So they're going to have to play through him, not in a way like the Denver Nuggets would play through Nikola Jokic or anything, kind of in that way, but mainly scoring through him and playing that inside-out game. Get him a paint touch, get it back out and shoot. They're kind of a guard by committee. I think they can win the national championship that way, and I think I had them winning the national championship in my last bracket, but I am going to have Gonzaga beat them. I think that they have those 3 bigs, like I mentioned, Braden Huff, Graham Ike, and Gregg. 3 really good players who can all defend Janai Broome. They're not going to completely stop him. Janai Broome is an excellent post player who can also spread out and shoot the 3 that he's been doing more this year. Hit the mid-range shots. And like we said, playmake. He can playmake a little bit too. And obviously rebound. So he's going to have an impact, but they are going to be able to take him out a little bit with those 3 centers and do enough, I feel like, to get by Auburn. I feel like Gonzaga is the one matchup Auburn, it would be different for them, and they might not want to see that matchup. Next up, we got Alabama versus Dayton, and another super fun matchup. I mean, I feel like Dayton is a team that can compete with some of these teams. We saw them in the Maui Invitational beat teams like UConn and compete with teams like Iowa State. They can definitely go on this run. I think it is possible, and I have them to the Final Four. I am going to have Alabama win. I feel like Alabama's just the better team, but I do want to give a shout out to this Dayton team between Enoch Cheeks, Nick Santos down low, Zed Key, like I said, the transfer from Ohio State, Posh Alexander, another really good defender, and Malachi Smith, of course, who is a lead guard who can play make really well, but also get you a bucket when you need it. And I feel like that is so key to have on a team in March Madness through these games. And shout out to Dayton. Got to have Alabama win, though. So we have a 3-seeded Gonzaga team and a 2-seeded Alabama team in the national championship game. This would be a fun one. Honestly, I don't know who I want to pick. If Alabama still had Latrell Wrightsell, I would probably pick them to win this game. I feel like they have so many good players still, and they could still win this game without him. But, man, I mean, Chris Youngblood, Mark Sears, the transfer from Auburn that they brought in, so many good guards. Grant Nelson down low, Cliff Amorie down low, Phil On, the freshman, who has been super underrated freshman away. This has been an insane freshman class that we have had this season. Philon has been a super underrated one for Alabama, but Gonzaga, this could be the year they finally get it done and win it all and get Mark Few his first championship because they have the team to do it. They have the lead point guard to be able to get it done, but I don't know if I do trust a guy like Nolan Hickman to, not turn the ball over if he does get it. They're going to have to keep it in Ryan Nembhard's hands. Keep Nolan Hickman as a pure catch and shoot. But Khalif Battle is also a really good player that is a transfer they picked up that has been huge for them and is the type of player that can help you win a national championship. He is a gritty guy who can get in there and do it all. But I'm gonna take Alabama. I'm gonna take Alabama for this bracket. It's definitely gonna change, of course, by the time we get to March Madness. We're gonna do so many more of these by the time we get there. For now, I'm going to take Alabama. They're playing really well right now. And yes, they've taken some early losses in the regular season. But they've all been to good teams. And they've gotten their share of really good wins as well. Proven that they are still a top team in the country. And they have an all-around great team. Made it to the Final Four last year. Are returning some really good players from that team. I'm going to take Alabama to win it all this season over Gonzaga. And Gonzaga, for the third time under Mark Few, make it to the championship game, but lose 0-3 in championship games. But that's going to do it for this one. Let me know what you guys think about my bracket. Out of this bracket, Joe Lunardi's recent Bracketology, who would you have in the Final Four at this point? Let me know down below in the comment section. And, of course, make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new. And I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas as well. Thank you guys so much for watching.